Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Manifesting with Meg, Conversations with Extraordinary People. Today, I'm so happy to celebrate my 59th episode with this incredible guest, Heather Knight. I can't wait to tell you all about her. She's amazing. She was brown hair when I met her. Now she is a chameleon. We have a blondie in the house. So I'm definitely going to have to ask you whether blondes have more fun. You got to be careful because I'm going to have to argue. You don't want to go there. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, we're just going to wait a little bit to get everybody on. But I just want to say I'm so happy to have you all as a part of the month of wisdom. Wisdom is by far one of the things I think we've all earned, certainly hard earned in many respects. And the bottom line is that when you're open and curious, you gain a lot of wisdom. And I know certainly tonight that is going to be the case. This is a show about transformation, dreams, inspiration, true happiness, discovering bliss, and it's always time to manifest the life of your dreams. I'm going to be sending out a big old blessing that we all act as if our wishes are already fulfilled tonight. For certain people that I'm thinking, I'm double crossing my fingers and away we go. Good evening, Heather. I have to remind us all that bliss is not just an abstract idea, but an attainable state of being. Wherever you are, you're just steps away from living the life you desire. So it's always time to wake up to a universe packed with possibility. As I tell everyone at the outset of my show, this is a show based upon my book, The Magical Guide to Bliss, which you will in fact get, Heather. And also, I want to remind everyone out there that I do follow the months in the Magical Guide. So March is the month of wisdom. And I always ask my guests at the outset to get intentional, to set an intention for the interview, and then pick a number so that we at the end can meet those intentions with kind of like a sealing the prize and this wonderful insight that we get to share with everyone. So without further ado, I want to introduce all of you to Heather. She is an advocate for women's empowerment, and I think it's so on point that we have her during the International Month of Women, which should be a year, by the way. And she is also an advocate for domestic violence prevention. Her career in law enforcement led her down the path of learning how to help women go from surviving in life to thriving after the traumatic experience of domestic violence. This led her to begin the nonprofit Surviving to Thriving, which provides a long-term sustainability program for individuals that want to thrive in life after surviving domestic abuse. So she's currently the founder and chair of this Atlanta organization, and her passion for domestic violence awareness and prevention started from a personal situation in her teen years, and that grew into a career in law enforcement. And then most recently, she left the police department in order to dedicate more time to her podcast, also Surviving to Thriving, which I'm going to make sure I include in the feed so everyone knows where to find you, and also to teach the headline program of R.A.D., Women's Self-Defense. And I would like you to actually tell me what that acronym stands for. So I'm so happy to have you on our show, Heather. Thank you for being here tonight. It is the week of her birth. Yesterday was her birthday, so we celebrate you. And at a very young age, I don't know how, you never ask a woman to tell their age, you're very young, but she's accomplished so much and in service to other women, which is something that needs to be celebrated and supported and congratulated, because I think when people think to be in life, to serve others, it's an amazing state of being. So thank you so much, Heather, for being here.
Thank you, Meg. I'm so excited to be here tonight. And so I'm 27. I'm not shy about my age yet. I'm still young enough there. And R.A.D. stands for Rape, Aggression, Defense.
Okay, so there you go. So she's a part of the program of Rape, Aggression. What is it? Aggression, Defense, Women's Self-Defense. And we'll get a little bit. But what I didn't mention in her bio is that she also is a dancer, which I know I was like, wow, I get excited about the creative arts as well. So, all of this, we all have so much, wealth and the wisdom, but also the wisdom of the arts that come through us as well. So I would love for you to talk about that. To start off tonight, our theme is just breathe. Sometimes that's the best advice. Certainly a great place to begin, taking deep breaths. So everybody together jointly. take a deep breath before we start and go off and get our heads clear so we can hear what perhaps Heather has to share with us all tonight. So focusing on the act of breathing clears the mind of all the daily distractions and clears our energy, enabling us to better connect with the spirit within. And that's a quote by someone who's unknown, but it's also something that will really kind of focus us tonight on those kernels of wisdom. And when life gets too crazy or overwhelming due to endless responsibilities, which I'm sure you know about with everything that you carry right now, it's really important to step back and remember to breathe, because it costs nothing. It could mean everything. And the whole mind, body, spirit connection to breathe fully is in fact a gift that we can freely give ourselves at any time. And I love the key too with regard to this insight, because it tells us how to breathe for a full 8 seconds in, hold it, and then out again for 8 seconds. And it really does calm us down. And I go a little fast too often. So I'd like to just calm us down and ask you, Heather, what are your thoughts of this? And maybe do you use breath with your Surviving to Thriving initiative?
Yeah, breath is a huge thing that can calm us down. It can hype us up. It is your being. And that the breath pattern that you're talking about is square breathing, and it is fantastic. It is used in so many different circumstances. I have several women that suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, and the number one thing that we go to before even trying to dissect why they're having a panic attack is doing this square breathing. And it's in for 4, 8, whatever you can hold it, and then breathe out again. You just repeat that until you can get your heart rate and your breathing back down to a normal spot, to where then you can start to process what's happening. So breathing is everything. Like you said, it's everything.
I did learn that technique when I was dealing with panic attacks, and it's very frightening, and it's very kind of out of body, like, oh my God, you feel like you're going to die. And generally a panic attack will come on after a significant traumatic event. And it's bad enough that you're dealing with this trauma, to couple that with a feeling of you're going to die. And it's actually your body that's kind of shutting down on itself. I do love that you explained that well. And certainly as a tool, it's really a great place to start when you feel like life is out of control. Just take a step back and take deep breaths. And also I can imagine with dancing, the way you hold yourself. And I wanted to ask you more about that, the whole breath and how that plays a part in the movement and how people flow. Because tell us a little bit about your dance career, because you have competitions and you are like, you show up, right? You show up.
Yeah. So I have not danced in maybe 5 to 8 years, but I was a dancer, competitive dancer for almost 15 years. So definitely in that whole arena. I was captain of my dance team in high school for 2 years. And then, I was in studio dance and did a lot of performances there. Most of my competition was through my high school team. And breath is everything, because you have to dance for 3.5 minutes and you don't get a break. And it is intense the entire time. And you are doing leaps and turns and running across the stage this way and that way. And it is just, you have to learn how to breathe through every single movement. And the great part about dance is that everything's in an 8 count. So as you are counting to 8, you can breathe in and breathe out. Now that I'm no longer dancing, I still work out probably 5 to 7 times a week. And breathing through that is also important, because if you don't breathe while you're working out, you could pass out. So breath is everywhere, and it's everything.
And, I wanted to go back with the whole everything component. Like, your life has been everything then. You went from the competitive dancing and then your journey to becoming a police officer, this incredible legacy that at 27 that you have to build on. Tell us a little bit more about that, so everyone can get an idea as to how you arrived to where you are running this incredible domestic violence prevention group.
Yeah. So I never, as a kid growing up, wanted to be a police officer. That was never any intention that I had. And I was a theater kid. I danced. I was a singer. Like I was a total like theater geek nerd, whatever. Like I was nowhere near like this badass woman that, is here today. And so I was at theater and I was 17, I want to say, almost about to turn 18. And one of the moms there was asking me, like, what are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, because I was working at a daycare at that point, and I loved working at that daycare. The kids that I taught are now like 15 years old. So like they're grown, but I still remember them as little babies, and I just want to hug them. And, like it was just the greatest experience that I have had. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go into early childhood. I'll be like a kindergarten teacher or something like that. And then I really loved to bake, and I was like, maybe I'll become a baker. So I was going through all of these different things, but I was obsessed with crime shows, like obsessed. It was beyond.
Which one was your favorite? Which one was?
Law and Order SVU.
Okay.
Was hands down my favorite. Now, probably Criminal Minds, because it's more, I don't know, it's just creepier. I don't know. I have a sick sense of humor, but it's okay. And so I was like, maybe I'll be a detective. Like, maybe that'll be really cool. And so that's kind of where the interest started, but it wasn't like from age 8, I was like, I want to be a cop. This is like my life choice or my life path. And so I had the daycare. I was working at the daycare. One of my really good friends, her dad was a pastry chef. So I went and I worked with him for a little while, got to tour a few kitchens. And then this mom at theater was like, hey, one of my really good friends is a police officer. Do you want to do a ride along with him? And I said, yes. Like, even if I don't want to be a cop, like this sounds amazing. So I went and I signed up, and he's like, come this night. And I was like, okay, cool. Didn't think anything of it because I was 18, couldn't drink, couldn't go out and party. Well, apparently I picked a Halloween pub crawl night.
Oh,
it was insanity.
Yeah. Was it a full moon too? Was there a full moon out at the time?
I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
And I fell in love with it. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is so cool. This is so much fun. And like the adrenaline is always there. And of course, like 4 years into policing, I'm like, okay, it's not always as exciting as that night was. But so I went to college for criminal justice. I got a bachelor's in criminal justice, a minor in Arabic, because my full plan was to go to a 3-letter agency. And by that, I mean FBI, CIA, DEA, all of that. So your ABC departments, as they call it. And so went and did the minor in Arabic and applied to a bunch of police departments and got in, started my career.
So, you have to make it through the boot camp. Like you have to make it through. Hang on, I'm going to take this down, but I want to show some of the quotes that you shared with me, because I always think like the quotes we use, that we identify with, really, really kind of are telling as to how we think. And this one is, whenever you find yourself doubting how far you can go, just remember how far you have come. Remember everything you have faced, all the battles you have won, and all the fears you have overcome. Now, I'm looking at you. You don't look like a huge presence. You definitely have the energy of a huge presence, but going into the police academy, what was that like, and how did you show up? And you made it through. So clearly you are a perseverer, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I was a lot tinier back then too. So I was like 110 pounds soaking wet. Not that anymore, but I was definitely tiny. The pictures when I look back at like when I graduated, like my uniform swallowed me. Like, oh God, how did I ever make it? But it was a lot of, I went to the academy with 5 people from my department. And so that was a huge help to have that support there. And it's when you get down to like the core of policing, I know there's like a ton of politicalness with policing right now, but when you get down to just the core and the people that are there, like the brotherhood, the sisterhood that's there is incredible. And it's not anything that you can match. Maybe the military you can match, but it's just that all together. Everybody wants everybody to succeed. So I was terrified that I wasn't going to qualify in shooting because I had shot a gun once in my entire life. And my instructors were like, no, that's actually a good thing because we can teach you how to do it. We don't have to unteach you the bad ways and then teach you the good ways. And we can just teach you how to do it. So that was like the biggest thing that I was scared of. I wasn't necessarily nervous about like the defensive tactics because I had been in gymnastics and dance. Like I'd thrown myself on the floor plenty of times and gotten hurt plenty of times. I wasn't afraid to get hurt. But it is nerve-wracking to be like, okay, this could happen in real life. Like I could be in this fight and like I could be fighting for my life. So when you like put that into perspective, it's a little nerve-wracking, but like when you put it in just passing the course, that wasn't a huge scare for me. Like it was nerve-wracking, but it wasn't a huge scare. I actually popped my sinuses while in defensive tactics. So that was fun to deal with, but.
So how does that happen? I mean, like you kind of look like the girl in the movie Kick-Ass. So I'm like, I keep thinking, oh yeah, I can see her. She's small, but she's like doing all these acrobatic moves all around people. And I can only imagine that at the time, you like get smacked in the face and you're just like, but I think that's a toughness. You literally have to show physicality, you showing up. And I laugh when you're telling me about the guns because I went to a training course at FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. When I was with DHS, I was training the officers in immigration law. And they're like laughing because I had never touched a gun. And they're like, oh, look at her. Like they were just thinking it was the cutest thing. And I was like, oh, put that gun in my hand, man. What's this going to be all good? It's a very powerful feeling. And it's very, you have a lot of respect for that as well. There has to be that, because it's not an easy action. To pull a trigger, it takes a lot of force to hold the gun. So I found that very eye-opening, and a lot of my, perhaps premonitions or my perspective beforehand changed. So I can only imagine that after how many weeks was the police academy for you?
10
weeks. So were you ever in a situation, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but were you ever in a situation where you were facing a, near death or kind of a challenging experience where your life was, was in harm's way?
Yeah. So 2 instances come to mind. One where I was faced with having to use deadly force, and then one where my life was in danger. The one where my life was in danger is actually kind of funny. In a way, but like it's funny because I used to not teach, but I used to go to high schools and colleges and recruit and do like this open communication with college students. Like, hey, if you want to ask me anything and we'll talk about it. Like, don't be afraid. And even if you want to call me a racist or you want to do this, like, we'll talk it out. Whatever is in the news, whatever shootings in the news, we'll talk about it. I'll give you the police perspective, you give me your perspective, and we'll, like it was a really big community thing that we did. And so of course, one of the questions I always get is, have you ever, what's the scariest moment of your life? And it wasn't scary until you sit there and think about it. Because if you think about all the scary things that happened to you, you would never be a police officer. You would never, you'd be like, I'm going home. I'm never coming back, because like you just can't think about it. But
I think if you watch the news too long to actually function outside in the real world, you'd be like, I'm too terrified. So you have to cut that off.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd never watched the news as a police officer. Never. It was just, not a thing. But we were running laser, which is speed. And so I was pulling this car over, and this man is the luckiest man ever, because I think I got him going like 30 over the speed limit. So it wasn't even like a petty, like, oh, whatever. No, 30 over the speed limit, 70 in a 45. And so I'm pulling him over. I go up, I grab his license, and I hear this car coming. I could hear it. This car was 2 miles away from me, and I could hear it coming. And so could the officers that were up the road still running speed. And they were like, do you hear that? And at first they thought it was an officer that was like, when officers know other officers are running speed, they'll come on, and, you know, they'll go.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they definitely do. They'll go mess with you to be like, oh, I got one. And then it's like, nope, it's just me. So they thought it was, you know, another officer. And then they're like, wait, no, that's like a Mustang or something. Like you could hear the way the cars sound. So they put the speed up and they clocked this guy going at like 130 miles an hour. I am outside of my vehicle talking to this guy that I just pulled over on the passenger side, which is on the side of the road. And I hear them coming. They're like, Heather, get out of the road. Like, this car is coming. We can't stop it. And I had just walked back in between my car and this guy's car. So I'm like right in the middle. So I step back and he comes flying by. If I had been on the road at that point, I would have been killed.
Wow.
And I threw the license back at the dude that I pulled over and I said, you're off the hook, buddy. Got in my car and took off after him. But
oh, wow.
that was one where my life was in danger, but I didn't even know it at the time. So it wasn't super scary until I thought about like, oh, that was okay. I could have been just like obliterated, not even just run over. Like I would have just, yeah.
And how long were you totally in total years on the police force then after?
4.5.
It was 4.5 years. And so you did many different like posts within like different job roles?
I had 2 different posts, if that's the easiest way to call it, assignments, I guess. The first one was night shift, and I did that for 2 years, and then I was the community outreach officer for 2.5 years.
Okay, awesome. So I also wanna I love this. Grow through what you go through. At the end of your tenure with the police officer, I'm sorry, what was your moment that you said, okay, it's time for me to shift and do something else?
The day before I turned in my 2-week notice, I came home and I must have just been the biggest bitch on the planet because my husband looked at me and he said, you are no fun to be married to in this job. And I said, okay, I'll turn in my 2 weeks tomorrow.
Wow. And he was also a police officer at the time.
Yeah, for almost a decade.
Oh, wow.
And he had left the same police department 3 years prior to me.
Oh, wow. So, it's very interesting. So had you thought of that before that 2-week period when you were just like, okay, here we are,
Yeah, I had been struggling with that decision for probably about 1.5 years. I knew that I didn't love it anymore, but I still loved it. I was the community outreach officer. I loved being in the community. I loved doing what I did, where I went to colleges and high schools and I had these real conversations, especially because I left the police department 2 years ago. Like we're in the height of all the politicalness, all of, the BLM movement, all of this. And so it was so powerful to have them sit with a Black woman who's on the force, talk to them like real, like I was like, there's no BS here. I will give it to you straight. There were shootings in the news that I didn't agree with, that I said, no, that officer should be fired or that officer needs to go to prison. And like, so they knew that I wasn't just saying like, oh, police are great, all this stuff. It's like, no, we make mistakes. We're human. And you have to remember that all of police officers are human and they're going to make mistakes. But hey, the criminals are human too, and they're going to make mistakes. And we all have to answer for those mistakes, no matter if we're police officers or criminals. Like, it doesn't matter. So I loved doing that and being in the community and helping with everything there. But the way that I was treated as a female in the department that I worked for was just nasty. And so I had to leave. Wow. So I was struggling for about 1.5 years with that because I loved what I did, but I knew that it wasn't good for my mental health.
Wow. And so it's interesting. It's kind of like, but you have this opportunity to this outreach, and you're feeding a definite need in the community. At the same time, obviously the stress has gotten to you that you're not pleasant to be with at your house with your husband. So right. At that point, you're just like, okay, something's got to give. And I think, I find it very interesting how we all, show up in our lives to make those determinations. So I like that you put this: the struggle you're in today is developing the strength you need for tomorrow. And let's turn to your wonderful Striving to Thriving initiative. So how did that evolve? And tell me a little bit about this beautiful legacy that you are building for yourself now.
Yeah, so this is kind of twofold. Part of it comes from policing, but the majority of it comes from when I was 16 years old. I was sexually assaulted, and people ask me all the time, like, how did you move through it? How did you, go on to this? And I don't know. At 16, I had the wherewithal. I had the decision where I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not like I was suicidal for a point, but I was like, I cannot live like this. I cannot show up in the way that I'm showing up because it's not healthy. But as a 16-year-old, I had no clue why I did that. There I can say like, oh, my family, literally my dad found out like 6 months ago that this happened to me when I was he listened to a podcast that I talked about, and he's like, I had no clue.
Oh, that's where you found out. He's like, oh,
found out. But like my sister, they'd be like, you don't smile anymore. Like, what's going on? And I never had the courage to say, this is what happened. I just kind of was like, okay, well, I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's a huge thing that I say to a lot of people is, I can't help you until you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So whenever you reach that point, we'll be here, and we'll grow through it. We'll grow through what you go through. But until then, I can tell you all day that you need to work through this, or you need to get, see a therapist, or you need to figure something out. But unless you're ready to hear it, you're not going to hear it. So that happened to me, and I made that decision that I wasn't going to be a victim anymore, and I was going to take that and grow through it. And I moved to Georgia, and I kind of left everybody behind, except for my family and 2 friends. And that's kind of that part of it. And I think that helped also shape where I wanted to be as a police officer. So on night shift, the majority of the calls that we get are domestic violence calls.
Wow.
And it's the same people over and over again. So I was very fortunate in being able to talk to those women and ask them like, hey, we're here at least once a week. Why are you still here? Which is a very difficult question to ask when you are not a police officer, right? As a police officer, have that ability to be like, why are you still here? Why are you still calling us? If I was a friend, or if I was that could be very victim shaming, very like, this is your fault. Why don't you just leave? So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, maybe I should just ask my friends that, don't do that. Like, do not just flat out ask them why they won't leave, because they'll just turn it and be very angry at you. But as a police officer, I could ask that question. So I was able to build this list of things that weren't, obviously, if they thought like, oh, well, I'm not in that bad of a relationship, or I'm not, if they didn't believe that they were in an unhealthy relationship, there was nothing I could do. But when they were like, well, I don't have the means, I don't have a support system, I don't have this, I don't have that. If I had all this, I would leave, because I know that this is not a healthy relationship. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's figure this out. Let's get some more resources in this area. And that, so coupled with my experience and then the experience of policing, I was able to form Surviving to Thriving.
So Surviving to Thriving, I just want to tell you that we have people who are on, Suzanne Simonetti saying, what a brave and strong woman, recognizing that your path certainly is one where you are not a victim. You decided that was the case, and they're recognizing that. It's very cool as well. And an impressive background, she says, as well as Sharon is saying, this is very cool. So acknowledging that, I do want to speak to what you just said as far as, those people that you had addressed when they called you to the house. I do love to share the wisdom. Obviously it's March, so that's a good point. But if someone is you assume, or you may perceive that maybe the issue is domestic violence there's going on, and you just don't want to be a passerby or stand by and watch this happen. What is something that you can share that would really make a difference in the situation, that won't exacerbate it by them shoving you out of their life, but embracing some sort of empathy when you don't know how it feels because you haven't walked that path?
That is a really good question, and one that we get a lot from supporters, and that's what we like to call them. You are the supporters, because in that situation, whether it's physical or mental or emotional or psychological control or abuse that these women are going through, and men too. I don't want to exclude men. They make up about 15% of domestic violence victims. We, however, just don't service men at this point. We want to in the future.
Yeah.
But that is something that when they're going through that, they are isolated. Their abuser will isolate them, and they'll make them think, or they'll go out and they'll go to all their friends, their families, and make it seem like they're the abuser, or they're being, narcissistic or controlling.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's the other way around. So if you suspect that, in fact, that woman is being abused, then I would say the biggest thing you can do is constantly be there for her. And I mean, I don't mean by saying, always being like, hey, whenever you're ready to leave, I'm right here. I just mean like, hey, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee? Do you need to talk? I'm here. Is your husband or boyfriend home? Do you want me to come over? I'll help you cook. I'll help you clean. Because the day that she's ready to leave, she will know that she has at least one person that she can call and say, I need to get out of this situation. Are you available? And if you are set on being that person, you need to stay that person for as long as it takes, because it could take years.
Wow.
It could take years. And the only thing that they know is that they don't have a support system, and that they are stuck in that situation because they don't think they have anybody. So if you're just constantly there for them, that's the biggest thing that you could do.
So you do have you have your Surviving to Thriving, and it's a podcast as well as it's also is it a shelter? Is it an organization? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? So those who are out there, especially in the Atlanta area, if you're listening, that perhaps, if you know of someone who needs a safe place to go, or you yourself need a safe place to go, that this is being offered by Heather and her organization.
Yes. So we are, as of right now, because of COVID, we are just hosting classes. So Surviving and Thriving, we do lifestyle learning courses. We have the women's self-defense course. And then we were planning in 2020 to have our sustainable housing program, which did not happen because, everything happened. But that is the goal for us, is to have our sustainable housing program, which is a 3 to 5 year program that is not a shelter, and you can use what you learn in the lifestyle learning courses to rebuild your life. So we literally take you from day one, step one, all the way to owning your own house or living in your own apartment, having your own job, being able to support yourself, and not having to rely on different assistance programs when you are completely self-sustaining.
Wow. And basically the whole, I love that you have a vision for your and obviously we plan, God certainly laughed this last year at all of us. So I guess your quote now, sometimes the most important thing is a whole day is the rest we take between two breaths, right? Because, sometimes we are so tied on to that vision of what we want that, we can get detoured. But in fact, the flexibility of that, you're still there, you're still working with this incredible community. And I'm going to show everybody your beautiful logo as well, so that they know that this is if they see this is Heather's baby. And certainly, this is what she's talking about right now. And I definitely think that the more women like you who are using something that was so significant in your life, you became a police officer, so you empowered yourself, right? You took your voice back, so to speak, and then you offered a safe space in this Surviving to Thriving element so that you could give other women, or men for that matter. I know we had the VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, when I was working with DHS, and it didn't contemplate men and women. So there is that component, but you're offering both of these individuals who may perceive themselves to be a victim to take their lives back. And tell me a little bit about this beautiful symbol of your organization, because I love the hip. I mean, I know, the Wonder Woman pose is with the two hips, but you got one arm down and one, tell me, I know it has some symbolism there.
It's not as deep as many people think, but it's really just, I know. It's really just the power pose. It's just powerful, but it's also, as women, you can be vulnerable, right? Because as you know, with Wonder Woman, it's like, nope, I have to be straight up and powerful all the time. Yeah. But there's also, with the arm down, there's that vulnerable side. And even as men or women, like, we can be vulnerable. This episode for the podcast is going to come out in a month or so, but the guest that I had, like, she said that the whole reason she got out of her situation was because her dad was vulnerable to her. Her dad cried. So like that, and that's what she's like, okay, like my dad is crying because of the situation I'm in. And so that's, like, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to let your guard down as men and women. So.
I want to go back to the vulnerability point, because I think it's really important. That could be a superpower as well. It could be quite enlightening when you share your story from a place of vulnerability, where you open up your eyes to the truth and the authentic person that you are. And that's something that I've always found you to be. We had a wonderful podcast interview together, and I just felt like you were incredibly authentic. You were incredibly vulnerable with your story. I think sharing that, and I know that it's been some time since you were 16, so maybe and actually, from what I hear you saying, is that you've actually explored it. You've explored the wound so that it could be healed, so that you can sit there and stand in a place of empowerment, so you can empower other people. Tell me a little bit about the name Surviving to Thriving, because I think that that's really powerful. I really do love that.
So a lot of times in domestic violence, even if you get out of that situation and you're living on your own, many people are just surviving life, and they're not living life to the fullest, and they're still living in that trauma, which is completely fine and okay. Sometimes you just need to sit in your own trauma and internalize it, and that's how you get through it. But at the end of the day, the end goal is to thrive in life. You only have one. And if you want, like, you don't want to sit there and just be like, all right, well, I went to work today and I, went home, I cooked, and then I went to bed, which some days that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what I did today. I worked and I cooked and, but that is not the end goal, right? If that's one day, because that is what you did today and that's what made you happy, and that's all that you wanted to do, that's fine. But if you are sitting in this trauma and you're struggling to get up, you're struggling to go to work, you're struggling to cook food, you're struggling to go to bed at night, there's something that needs to change, and there's something that needs to be worked on, because that's not a way to live life, right? It's okay to be there for a little while, because everybody needs to process that trauma, but that's not living life, and that's not thriving in life. And so our goal is to take people from surviving, which is why we're not a shelter, and why we don't extract people from these situations. We are the after effect. You're already out of that situation, and maybe you've done time in the shelter and you're ready to be out of the shelter. That's when you would come to us. We are kind of the transitional point, because there's not a lot of services that help you once you're out of that situation and you're like, okay, well, I've been in the shelter for 30 days and they're going to kick me out tomorrow. So where do I go?
Yeah, I do love that you said that. And I want to point this out. You did have brown hair once.
Yeah. You can still see it mostly. Undercut.
And I love that you wear purple, because I think purple is a really empowering color as well. The soft and the vulnerable and the wisdom is all there in the purple. So I had to show that, because I was like, maybe you're blonde now, but you actually were. And, sure.
It was. And a little bit of.
I love that. I was like, I don't even know why I put it. I was just like, oh, but I knew that you were going to show me the blonde hair tonight. I wanted to continue on with regard to what you're saying as far as the thriving component, and that, if you're struggling in life, that's no way to live every single day. If it's constant and you feel like you're stuck, I do love the concept, and I'm playing with this now because I'm working on a talk about women collaborations and power of women collaborations to make a difference and change the world. And I know that you're doing that right now, and that's why I know that you're an extraordinary person, because certainly taking the wisdom of all of your experience, and you're just not staying there. You become a conversation that we could all be proud of, and how you intend to be present in the world. So, how does this speak to you now about changing the conversation around domestic violence then, from, someone who, it's a problem, to something else?
That is the whole goal of the podcast, is to talk about the taboo topic of domestic violence, because it's not something that anybody should be ashamed to talk about, because it is a huge, has no bounds socioeconomically, racially, gender. It touches everybody. And if you sit back and look at your life hard enough, you will know somebody that has been affected by domestic violence. So for us to sit here and not talk about it and not make it a priority in our lives is something that's really sad to me, because it's such a huge thing in everybody's lives. And so that is where, the goal of the podcast is to at least just get the conversation started, because nobody wants to talk about it. And then the ultimate goal and the ultimate mission and vision of Surviving to Thriving is to be a collaborative with all of the nonprofits in this area, so that we can all share and give to the community. I don't think that any one program is better than the other, because guess what? Even if you have 3 shelters in one area, they're all going to be full.
Yeah.
Because there's that many people that need that assistance. So being able to work together is going to hopefully end this pandemic. It's a second pandemic that we're living in, epidemic, whichever, you want to call it, and will bring light to the people that it needs to be brought to their attention.
As far as intention is one concerned, I definitely want you to identify at least what's the definition of domestic violence, just so people, it's not this amorphous, concept. There's actually a definition behind it, and that, that a lot of people try to gaslight, like you said. A lot of the people who are the ones, who are perpetrating this are gaslighting it, like you're crazy, you're making it up in your head, it's nothing to do, you don't know what you're talking about. So then you start to question whether you're sane or not. So I think by identifying what that is, and certainly you're definitely in the position because you were a police officer, and now you are working with a lot of people to give those lifestyle learning skills to help them thrive. Can you give us a working definition, that if anyone is really contemplating, is this me? Is this happening to me? That they could basically take away from at least this conversation.
Yeah. So first and foremost, domestic. Let's not focus on the violence. Let's focus on the domestic part. Domestic is any spouse or former spouse, ex or current boyfriend or girlfriend, roommates, child to parent, or grandchild to grandparent. If you are living together, that is domestic. So if you are a grandparent and you're abusing your grandchild, that's domestic violence. If you guys live together. So a lot of people don't understand that, even roommates, right? That's the huge thing that people don't understand. If you are living with somebody, it's domestic violence. Violence. You have physical violence, which is the easy one for everybody to figure out, right? That's bruises and broken bones and lacerations and abrasions and all of those things. And they're very easy to point out and very easy to see. And that's not really the one that anybody, 9 times out of 10, that's not the kind of violence that you're going to see, especially right off the bat. Physical violence manifests itself over time, because at the point that the physical violence starts, they've already taken control of that person's lives. life. And so then you have a few other things. You have emotional violence, which is basically making their, your self-worth and your just always being put down, and you're never good enough, and you're never all of these things. Then you have your psychological and mental control or abuse, and that is where the gaslighting comes in. And this is the most common form of domestic violence, and this is where it starts. And that is your, they have these blow up kind of things, or these they just blow up, they get angry, and they say things, and they're like, well, that's not what I meant, or that's not what I said, or you're making things up. Or they'll just say it in passing, right? Or they'll be like, oh, those jeans don't fit you like they used to, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you say, like, then the next day, or a couple of days down the road, you're like, hey, I was thinking of like getting new jeans because you said you didn't like the other one. And they're like, I never said that. Like, what are you talking about? It's all these simple things that you would never be like, no, I know you said that because it's in a text message, or we had an argument, and like all these things. It's all these like random things in passing. And then they tell you like, no, that never happened. So then, like you said, you start to question your sanity, and you're like, maybe I'm forgetting things. Maybe I'm making things up in my head. And then once you reach that point, then, the emotional abuse comes. And then a huge one is financial abuse that people don't think about. And that's when, even if you're working a job, the money goes directly into their account, or, you're a stay-at-home mom and you don't get, you get an allowance, and, you don't have complete access to all of the finances and things like that. Like with me and my husband, he's in the military, so he does bring in a paycheck, even though we've got our businesses, so we're also entrepreneurs. But that's our money. Even though he's the one working for it, it's our money because we're married. And so like I have complete access and control of all of the money just as much as he does. And if he were to then say like, nope, I'm gonna like change the passwords, you don't have access to it, and here's $100 to go buy groceries before you go in the house, like that is financial control, and that is what is detrimental to people being able to get out of those situations, right? Even if you come to the realization, you're like, oh, I am being mentally abused, emotionally abused, physically abused. If you're being financially abused, you're dead in the water, and you can't do anything about it.
So I want to. So now that you have this wonderful organization, Surviving to Thriving, I one of the things I really want to point out is that what makes you extraordinary is that you saw something and you did something about it. But not only that, it's because you have incredible empathy. People who, like Suzanne is saying, that's gaslighting. That's clearly something that you're already questioning whether your mind is still there. I wanted to, before we go into the manifesting part, I just want to say, what is the one thing that moves you forward in life that you can share with anyone who needs to hear it?
So it might not be the one that's great for domestic violence, but my husband is the one that moves me forward in life. I told you before we started the show that I would not be on this path without him. I would still probably be a police officer, miserable and hating life, if it weren't for him. I would not have started this foundation without him. He was the one, he had his business on the side of the military, and he wanted to attach a purpose partner basically with it. And, we talked about it, and he's like, no, this needs to be a foundation. It needs to be your foundation. Amazing. And that is, that's how all of that came about. Like, really, he's the one, like, yes, I had like, hey, this is something that's really dear to me, and this is something that I think we should work on. And he's like, but he was the one that brought it to fruition in the first place. So I would not be anywhere without him.
And I think the most important thing that you say, that there are healthy relationships. There are relationships that can be healthy. You don't have to exist in something that makes you feel worthless or less than. You have people in your life that support your dreams and work together and collaborate together, toward this great vision that you have, which I think is what you're saying here. So I love the part about the show where we get to manifest together, because I think that, manifesting in and of itself is really intentional. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we all have intentions in life. And when we're having our focus and the clarity after we take the deep breaths, right, then we can actually fine tune what it is that we want or we desire, or that will fulfill our lives to make it a really wonderful one surround, rather than this really depleting one, and being present to others to show them a different path as well. So now we get to manifest. So for you, what is it that you in fact prioritize in your life now at this stage?
So I have a 4-year-old that's living with me right now. She's not mine, but she's mine. So I definitely prioritize her above a lot of things. I think that at this age, it's really important that she has people around her that care about her. And she's got a lot of people around her that care about her. And so that is a huge priority. But also at the end of the day, I prioritize myself. And that's been really hard for me to do. I've always been a people pleaser. I've always wanted to, just make everybody happy before I make myself happy. And so even if at the end of the day, I have done everything for everybody else, I still take that time to okay, well, I'm going to watch, my show on Hulu or Netflix, and I'm going to take my time to be with myself. Or, we also own a production company. So a lot of times I'm working on client stuff, but then, I'm like, hey, this is something that I really want to do. So I'll switch off the work mode and just work on things that I want to do with our production company. So
that's really important. And it also fills your cup, especially when you feel depleted, you're actually doing things to take care of yourself, which is perhaps, they say in the plane, they said, when the oxygen is low, put the mask on yourself first and breathe in before you help another person, or you're nothing, or you can't handle it. You can't help anybody. Nobody can really serve from an empty cup. And I want to know, this is like the all-time favorite question. They say, what tools do you use to manifest this incredible journey that you've already, started crafting for yourself?
So let's see, the tools that I use, breathing and meditation are huge. Just being able to kind of just shut out the world for a little while. Reading is huge.
Reading. We love reading. All the readers out there.
Yes.
You haven't book in you yet, Heather? Is there a book around you yet?
Let's see. Now that the weather is warming up, riding around in my car with the music blaring.
Nothing better, right?
Yes. So just little things in life,
One of the things that brings to mind is that I remember coming home from a trip once with my friend Paulina, and we had the song "You Don't Own Me" on, right? It was "You Don't Own Me," and we were yelling out like we were liberated, and we're telling the world, we're here and we're just gonna embrace life and back off all of you that have an opinion about what I'm doing. I don't care.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the best. I felt like a teenager again. I was like, this is great. Remember when you were a kid, you would cruise around and you just play your music, and all the parents are like, oh, they're so annoying, they're horrible, but you're alive and you feel it, right? I love that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to think about you this week, Heather, as I annoy everyone else. But I'm in Miami and there are cars bouncing around like that, so it doesn't make a difference.
That's how I feel when I pull into my neighborhood. I'm like, oh, let me turn this down. They probably think I'm crazy.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Or you have the earpods on and you're dancing and it looks like you're having some sort of I don't know, you're having a seizure and you're just listening to your music and you're just in heaven and everyone's thinking there's something wrong with you. But who cares, because you're happy, and and I love it that you said that, because music brings you to life. And I love that. I swear I'm going to do it. I'm going to think about you, Heather. Hopefully I won't get pulled over by the cops for being too loud to tell. I know Heather. Don't you know her?
They're gonna be like, I don't know who that is.
They're like, oh yeah, try that one again, honey, right? Try that pass. So at the beginning of the interview, I asked you to set your intention for the conversation. My God, have you provided so much wisdom for all of us tonight, and I'm grateful. I always say I want to have fun. I had fun the first time we talked to each other. That's why you're back with me again. I love your spirit. I love your vision. I love your wisdom, and I love where you're taking your life, because I think that being of service to others is so amazing. So thank you, really, thank you for being here with me tonight with this really important conversation, both so many issues all wrapped in this wonderful person, Heather. We have, gender in the police force. We have, color in the police force. We have challenges, in life. We have crossroads. We have all of this stuff. So back to you. What was your intention tonight when we joined at the beginning?
My intention was to just bring awareness to domestic violence. As I said earlier, the biggest thing for us right now is to just make it a topic that people are okay talking about, because if we can't talk about it, we can't fix it.
Yeah. I think that's really important, is, the conversation, addressing it. Don't let it be sitting in the secrecy of, someone's soul. Unfortunately, it needs to come out, and we need to start discussing ways. And I think that that's what is, in fact, what you're doing. And I'm really, really proud to know you. The other thing that we do is we pick a number. So you picked number 7, and I'm going to let you go ahead and read that, because I always say that it's like the whole full circle effect. We start off with the magical guide and its wisdom, and we end with the magical guide working through you. So it's just my little magical touch. So go ahead, go for it.
Remember, life is an adventure. Because of our routines, we forget that life is an ongoing adventure. Maya Angelou. We have all been blessed with the gift of life. Sometimes, caught up in our daily routine, we forget what a precious and rare blessing this actually is. There is magic in the synchronistic timing that brought our souls into this physical existence. There is magic in the moment we took in our first breath and then cried out to the world that we are here. There is magic as we realize that we have gained knowledge from our great journey, becoming everything we are meant to be. From this positive perspective, when we look around and behold those accompanying us on our way, we can be grateful for what is in store. From this positive vantage point, when we connect with those placed on our path to bring us comfort, wisdom, or perhaps small acts of kindness, we acknowledge the blessings of the shared experience. We are here for just a short time. We must remember to seize each and every opportunity. The present moment offers so much more than we can imagine as we simply open our eyes and welcome what is right before us, breaking out of routines, taking chances, and becoming conscious of life's magic and miracles. When we start to think outside the box, we become open to the beauty that changes us for the better. And then we can come alive and participate in new adventures, grabbing others to join us on our way. Our magical key to bliss is take a magical ride, rent a movie that inspires you.
Take a magical ride, play the music you like really loud, and then go watch some Criminal Minds tonight. Yes. There you go. I definitely think that the adventure is certainly best shared when there are people that are really wonderful and joining you on the path. I want to shout out to Sarah Elkins for this magical connection. You are an incredible woman. What you're doing is incredible, and I'm supporting you from Miami. Keep going. And if I could ever help, and collaborate, I do want to give you the opportunity to set out how people can contact you. If perhaps if you know someone who needs to talk to Heather and her group and her organization, her foundation, please specify so that people can reach out. And you are a wonderfully safe place. You've been trained in this. You know how to, work in this environment, and you are a great resource. So go for it.
Yeah, so I'm across all social media platforms as Two Thriving ATL, TO Thriving ATL. And if you would like to get in direct contact with me, you can either DM, or my email is heather.knight@twothriving.org.
And that's KNIGHT, Heather, HEATHER.KNIGHT at, what is it again?
twothriving.org.
T-O?
Yep.
Thriving, THRIVING.org, O-R-G. So like I said, Heather is an incredibly loving and empathetic person, and it's really going to be worth your while if you need that resource, or you know someone who needs that resource, to reach out to her. I want to thank you again, Heather, for manifesting with me tonight. Certainly, I hope to step into that space of manifesting so your dreams can come to life, so we all can live a life aligned with our passion and our purpose. Once again, I want you to see this beautiful woman with the brown hair. Because I know she's going to have a lot of fun as a blonde, but remember your roots, baby. I do want to give you the final bit of inspiration tonight. So send us all off so that we can, be deliberate creators of our life and also set out in a magical way our dreams.
Meg, first, I just really want to thank you for having me on your show. I've had just an incredible time talking with you and getting to share my somewhat wisdom, if that's what we need to call it, with you. So
Great wisdom. Great wisdom. Wisdom comes from the word wise, and the only way we get wise is if we have lived experiences, and you definitely have lived experiences, so you've earned it. You've earned it.
Well, thank you. My parting words is, if you're still breathing, you haven't been beaten.
There you go. So if you're still breathing, you haven't been beaten. Suzanne's saying, oh, you're definitely magic and miracles. So once again, remember, we're all deliberate creators of our life. Dream big and let us all raise the positive vibrations on this planet. How we love ourselves, self-love, self-care. Like Heather was saying, be bold and awaken to this wonderful once around. My book is coming out September 7th, 2021, Butterfly Awakens. I share that with all of you. I'm going to showcase this lady again. So whenever I get a chance, with all the good stuff, I'm going to make sure that I can post on my social media so you all know about it. And until next time, I love you all. Have a wonderful evening and good night, Heather. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.